I look like shit, and I have been sleeping for maybe 4 to 5 hours a night over the last week because I've been getting notifications from all of the trolls that I've been trolling on TVNZ's COVID coverage. And oh my god, it's an eye-opening experience. So let me preface this with a little bit of a story for you. I actually applied for a job at TVNZ towards the end of last year. We had interviews and it was a role looking after their social media platforms. And I didn't get it, which is fine. I hope the person that got it does very well with the role. One of the things, though, that it lets me do now is actually sit there and look at what pops up on the TVNZ social media streams and the kind of responses that they have. And one of the things that surprised me when I looked into this was just how fast everybody attacks stories around COVID. And it's instant and negative, and it's always the same names. And so I don't know if the rumors about there being a mailing list or a bot set up to give notifications when this happens, but it seems to be like there's something happening behind the scenes to draw these people in. However, I'm kind of skeptical about the idea of there being a bot that sends out notifications, because when you deal with these people, it's hard to see how one of them is smart enough to do that. Now, there's a lot of common themes that seem to pop up as well with the people that are making these comments about how wrong the vaccine is, how wrong the government is, why the freedom protests, convoy, whatever the hell they're calling it, is absolutely right to do what they're doing and stay the line, and appropriating language from other far more important issues like apartheid, the Springbok tour, a whole bunch of stuff that's been imported from the States, Trumpism. There's a lot of factors that come into play with this, and it's really well documented by this point just how poorly organised that event was, or is. Technically it's still going while I record this. I don't know if it'll still be going by the time this actually rolls out. But it's really clear when you sit down and you look at the comment section that nothing you say or do is going to keep people thinking. They don't critically respond to information that's presented to them. They don't seem to understand how to take in information and process it, which is really strange. But there's also a couple of really odd commonalities I've found with things like the profile pics that they've got. They actually fit into two very different categories, generally men and women, obviously different sort of photos, but these are the two sort of photos that you're looking at, which I've recreated here because I've got nothing better to do until Monday when I start my new job. But it's kind of scary just how cut and paste all of these people who claim not to be sheeple are with their comments, with their reactions, and when you provide them with evidence, it just doesn't seem to sit well with them, because there's no such thing as a verifiable source of information as far as they're concerned, as they haven't been spoon-fed it by the media that they choose to listen to. And that actually is kind of the crux of where I was going with this, in that you choose which media you use. It's entirely up to you. You don't have to sit down and watch TVNZ's news programs if you don't believe that the information that they're presenting to you is right or accurate, or you agree or disagree with their bias. You can choose not to watch that. However, every mainstream media news outlet has, to varying degrees, got the same message going on about what's happening around COVID, around mandates, and around these protests. And the protesters don't like it. However, they refuse to stop looking at it. They feel like they own it, like it's something that they are entitled to do without even looking at a story. They will base judgment on just the title alone, and I am sure that there's some old adage about books and covers and judgment that should be coming into play here that just doesn't. And the way that they justify it is that we gave $50 million to the media, so we should be the ones sitting here monitoring what they do. Now, that $50 million was actually part of the COVID response unit to ensure that businesses that suddenly had advertising revenue disappear were able to keep operating. That $50 million was spread around a whole bunch of media outlets, not just one, and it wasn't a payment for subjugation. It was the same sort of business subsidy that other businesses were getting, but tailored specifically for media. I mean, for something like TVNZ, where 90% of their revenue actually comes from advertising, a $50 million portion of that $50 million is really there to make sure people can keep their jobs going. And the media is a really important tool in getting information across, whether or not you agree with the biases that come through in that media. These people do not agree with anything, though, that the mainstream media is saying. Now, this is the tricky part, because I firmly believe to get a fairer, bigger picture of what's going on, it's important that you consume media from multiple sources so that you can see the different biases coming to play and make up your own decision, landing somewhere roughly in the middle. But when you are so vehemently against mainstream media in general, you're not going to get that. You're going to be fed nothing but misinformation, which is what's happening, which is what's led to these protests, which is what's led to 900,000 Americans dying from COVID, because misinformation is dangerous and rife. But you can't force people into consuming media. They have to choose how they do that, which is where a lack of critical thinking comes in. By only having one media source in your diet of media incomes or outputs, whatever you call it, you're locking yourself into a scenario where the information you're being fed is going to constantly either reaffirm your bias for or against something, or it's going to be completely pointless to you because you can't process it at all. And what dealing with the TVNZ trolls has shown me is that these people have a confirmation bias that they don't want to listen to. You can throw stats and figures at them, you can throw any bit of information you want at them. It doesn't matter, because in their head it's constantly twisting and turning to make sure that their view of the world is the one view of the world that they are willing to stand up and die for. And if Omicron does break out into the community, standing up and dying might just be what happens to a group of unvaccinated people who refuse to listen to science, and doctors, and people who just want to keep everyone alive. But that's their choice. I guess that's the freedom that they're after. Their choice on how they live and how they die. That's enough of me for this week. I've got a new job to go and get ready for, and a pounding headache, which is not helping. I will catch you guys all next week. Ka kite anō.